Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome again to another Cars and Coffee. And if you're a car guy that wants to learn more about performance and all things cars, you are in the right spot. I'm Kenny Brown. For the next hour or so, I'm going to share with you some of my extensive knowledge and experience from professional motorsports and building some really great street cars, track cars, and championship-winning race cars. So this morning, it's going to be what we're going to talk about is on the tech side. I'm going to talk about my philosophy on developing the S197 suspension geometry. Also, we've also got another set of the Kenny Brown Pro 4R race brakes in for Clinton's car that we're tuning up. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. And I also wanted to show you the 14-inch conversion kit we have for the rear brakes on S197s. And of course, I'll be answering your questions live. If you've got questions, please send them in. Carrie has been under the weather, so I don't have one question. Typically she looks at the questions and gives them to me. I only have one question today, so please send in some questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to. I lost it. Oh, there I am. Okay. Small technical error. Anybody that's been with us for a while know all about our technical gremlins always pop up every now and again. I think I set my paper on my computer and made something go away. So anyway, where did I leave off? Yeah, questions. Please send in some questions. I'll be happy to answer them. Like I say, Carrie only has one question for me this week. And let's see, last week I did on Wednesday evening, I did a workshop specifically on building the ultimate IRS Cobra for people that have Cobras. And also we have a lot of people now that are putting the Cobra IRS onto Fox bodies. So we had a really good workshop last week. I had a lot of people register for it. And I think everybody seemed to be pretty happy. And I thoroughly hope they learned a lot from what I was teaching. And that went so well. Carrie wants me to do a workshop on a specific S197. So look for that to be coming up in the coming weeks. That sounds crazy, but look for that in the coming weeks. I'll do a workshop specifically on S197, and you're actually going to get a little bit of a preview when I talk about the suspension geometry. Going down as you know, Carrie writes my list for me. Going down my list, stay tuned for the workshop. 15-minute consults. Carrie is opening up my schedule for some more 15-minute consults, complimentary, they're free. You just have to sign up for them, I think either on the website or somewhere in there, or you just call in and get a hold of Carrie and she can put you on my schedule. And you've got questions, you need help kind of figuring out what car, technical questions, or a build plan. I'm really good at creating build plans. And if I know what your end result, what you're looking for at the end, and what your resources are to put into it, I can help you come up with a build plan that makes sense. So you don't have to do things twice and waste money. Let's see. Okay, here she says again. If you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown. This is Cars and Coffee, and I'm sharing my knowledge and experience with you and answering your questions. And I hope I can teach you to learn something. Thumbs up. Please give us some thumbs up. That always works, and send some love. That helps us spread a little bit. Speaking of spreading a little bit, if you're learning things and you have some friends that you could think would benefit from what we talk about, please share with us. We've actually got some people that are putting up as watch groups, putting some watch groups together. So there's something for you to do. And the next thing on my list, history of cars and coffee. Well, I started it just because we had a whole lot of people that after I do tech seminars and tech sessions at tracks, people come up and say, boy, I wish I could get into your brain just for a little bit. So that's why we started the whole cars and coffee thing. So sort of like I'm sort of downloading what's in my brain for everybody. I mean, I can't take it with you. And I've learned a lot and know a lot. So I have no problem sharing. And the people in the academy actually know very well how much I share. Okay, this month's artwork is another one of Nicholas Watt's pieces. I have several of these. He's an awesome artist. But this is called Formation Finish. and it is Le Mans 1966 with the 3 Ford GT 40s finishing in formation, which is pretty cool. And next week, we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of artwork, we're going to feature some posters that come from down under. Marcus Z is racing in the touring car Masters. He was racing a Ford Falcon, an Australian Ford Falcon, but they are building a Fox body, and it's getting a lot of attention down there, and they're using our stuff. So that's kind of really cool. And we're helping them build this car from halfway around the world. But yeah, they got a suspension and a rear end, and we're looking for them to really do a good job when they put it together. So I got some posters from Marcus just the other day, so we'll feature them instead of regular art. Let's see. I'm on page 2. Again, 15-minute consults. My philosophy newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter or notifications. I think there's a bell or something you can click on to get notifications when I'm going to go live. And also, I think there's Speed Therapy Society. If you're not a member, please join. It's an awesome group of people. A lot of like-minded car people. There's over 500 people in there now, and there's a lot of conversation, a lot of pictures of cars, and that's where the questions come from that I talk about every week. Because, like I said before, I talk about what you guys want to learn about. I could talk about a million things, but if I want you to teach you what you. Let me back up. Okay, I want to talk about what you want to know about. So with that, I'm going to answer my one single question today, and this is a question on Delrin versus urethane bushings. Delrin is kind of like a big buzzword. Everybody wants to go Delrin bushings, but for me, there's an application for urethane. There's an application for Delrin. Delrin, if you aren't unaware, is a very, very dense material that has some anti-friction qualities, and it's used a lot in professional race cars. I only use Delrin in race cars. Everything else we use urethane in the front. Now in the back, you heard me tell before, we never ever use urethane bushings in the rear suspension. Never ever, because urethane does not twist. And your rear suspension rear axle needs to articulate. And when you put urethane bushings, it's great if you're going drag racing, straight line, they work perfectly. As soon as you go around the corner, they just don't twist, which means your suspension is going to it's going to get to a point. It's not going to go any further. And then you got nothing, and it's going to get loose. That's why cars with urethane bushings in the back are so loose, because you run out of suspension. That's why on the rear grip kit for S197s, it's all double adjustable in rod ends, high quality rod ends, really good, like professional grade rod ends, Teflon lined, so they don't make noise and they're self lubricating. But on the front, and also on like an IRS car where you've got something that's moving straight up and down, that's where we use urethane. And the urethane we switched to a couple of years back is black, and it's actually a little denser than some of the others, and it's silicone impregnated, which makes it kind of good. But as far as Delrin, when I use Delrin on race cars, we actually custom fit each bushing for each location, so that we get, when I say a control arm, if I lift the control arm up and let go, it'll come down really slow. And we work really hard to make that happen, just so it's kind of perfect. The issue with Delrin running on the street or even track day cars is when you've got that solid bushing. This is just my opinion. I'm sure other people have other opinions, but when you stiffen up that suspension, all of a sudden you're dramatically shrinking your window of allowable mistakes, which means reactions are faster and things happen faster, and you don't have enough time to correct for any mistakes. It makes it really precise. So for track day guys, it's like the black urethane is the way to go. It's pretty solid, but it gives you just that little bit of extra room for air. But with Delrin, and your air envelope shrinks a lot, quite a bit. Same thing with not super high springs. Like the stiffer and firmer you make a car, the better it's going to handle. But your air thing just starts shrinking. So that's my philosophy in Delrin. It's great stuff. Like I say, we use it. All our race cars use it because that's a specific application. And even on like the IRS cars for racing, we'll put in some. But like I say, we custom fit Delrin to every bushing, so I get that precise fitment. Lift the control arm up, and it just kind of comes down like that. And it's not that easy to do. So that's my answer on Delrin. Carry highlighted toolbox. Yep, that's my toolbox over there. It's been with me for a long time.
Someone had one question. It says, what do you think of the white line gyro bushings?
White line gyro bushings. Honestly, I'm not familiar with them. I don't know, what are they made of? That'd be my question. I don't pay attention to other people. I mean, I learned in racing a long time ago, you keep your nose forward and forget about everybody else. So you have to give me a little more information because I'm just not familiar with it. So moving right along. Yeah, if you can send some information, send it in, and Bridget will let me know, and I'll go back to that. Okay, should we do the philosophy first or Pro 4Rs? Let's do Pro 4Rs to get them out of the way. The story behind the Pro 4Rs is several years back. I mean, we've been working with Bear for a very, very long time. They're great people, great customer service, great products, and that's all I ask for. And we're talking about doing something unique to the Kenny Brown brand. It was totally unique. And we were starting talking, and Rick said, we've got some extras of the brakes we built for Paul in 2011. Those that aren't aware, my late son Paul was the GTS champion in actually a boss as we built ourselves in 2011. He actually absolutely dominated the series. Dominated in a big way. Anyway, he showed up at the first event with 6-piston calipers. And, the SCCA pulls out the little rule book and it says you have to have 4 pistons. So Bear went to work and they developed a custom 4-piston brake package for Paul that he used to dominate and win the championship. Ever since that time, it was sitting on the shelf. So we started talking and said, well, let's that'd be kind of cool to have a really, really good race brake. So we started with what that Paul used, but just kept adding more and more and more features. I mean, we packed every single race caliper feature we could into the calipers. And it's to find anything that's got these many features, you'd have to go to like a Brembo GTR, which I think for a Mustang, maybe $8,800 an axle set. But here, I'll show you. I think these are real race brakes. You can see that there's some beef to them. However, if you look underneath, you probably see we go through and we lighten it. We take material out only in places that doesn't matter. If the material's gone, just take a little weight out. And I think you can see the castellated pistons in there. They're stainless castellated pistons to help reduce heat transfer from the brake pads into the caliper. And the clamping force is amazing. That's 6. Can't remember the name. They're like super, super strong bolts. There are 6 bolts that clamp the calipers together. And of course, the radial mount that bolts on the car, and you can see it's ARP studs and 12-point nuts, which are like fully racing stuff. Now, another trick, pads drop in from the top. Just click, makes pad changes super easy and super fast. So, this is, I'm so proud of these. I mean, this really, we put a lot of work into them, and everybody's put them on their car. I mean, this is a track brake or a race brake. Anybody's put them on their car just raves about them. Speaking of brake pads, something we did that makes it kind of unique and really cool is, remember I said that Paul used the 6-piston calipers, but they wouldn't let him use it. They switched to 4-piston. Well, the way these brakes are set up, they actually use the same pad profile as the 6-piston, big 6-piston Bears. However, that's a brake pad. The brake pads are 0.98, 25 millimeters, 0.98 inches thick. That's almost an inch thick brake pad. And why is that important? Well, a couple things. Number one, it handles heat a lot better. Secondly, you don't have to replace pads as often, and they really don't cost that much more than the regular pads. Because the regular 6-piston pads, I think, are a 0.71 thickness. Most OE pads are in the 0.5 range. So this is, basically almost twice as thick as an OE pad. But it's the same profile on the backing plate as the 6-piston with an inch thick pad. And the thing what I didn't mention is on the 4-piston, the whole 4-piston package is lighter than a 6-piston. So we save weight on the caliper by doing a 4-piston. We save weight on the caliper and just pack tons of features in. There's a whole bunch more features, but I can't remember them all. But to complement that, what we do is we have a 14-inch by 1.25 R-spec rotor. And what makes it R-spec is a couple of things. First of all, it cools a lot better. Next, it's lighter than a normal rotor. And third, it's mounted with Belleville washers. I don't know if you can see those. So it's sort of quasi-floating. And it's, this is real race brake stuff. Our rotors are quite a bit lighter than just a regular 14-inch by 1.25 rotor. So that's what we do on the front of the car, which is pretty awesome. Of course, we put brake ducts on and high temperature brake fluid. But the other thing, any S197 that we do any kind of brake package on the front, even like on the Boss cars, the Boss Mustangs. If we upgrade, they've got the Brembos. If we upgrade to the 2-piece slotted rotors, which actually improve the efficiency of that brake, we go to the back and we do a big update. Now that's a rear rotor. Okay, that's a rear rotor off an S197. And we've got a kit that upgrades to a 14-inch rotor. It's pretty cool. You get a 14-inch 2-piece slotted rotor. The thickness is the same as the factory, so there's no problem there. And the bracketry that comes with it takes the stock caliper and it just moves it out, so you have a 14-inch rotor. And it's totally transparent to the ABS. And the other thing about it is that, why go to a 14-inch rotor? Well, just think, you've had a ratchet and you're trying to break a nut loose and it's really tight, and you're pushing down and it won't go. Then you get a breaker bar and you push down and you crack it loose. It's leverage. You get way more leverage on a 14-inch rotor than do I think 11.75 or something like that factory rotor. So those are two cool things. We use a ton of these, and everybody loves them. We've also found out in testing a number of years ago that when we put the big rotors on the back, especially with the suspension we're going to talk about, the rotor temperature went up, which means that you're using the rear brakes more. If you're using rear brakes more, then your stopping distance is getting shorter. So speaking of stopping distance, let's kind of switch over to the philosophy on my S197 suspension. First of all, it's called AGS 4.0. And what that stands for, it's the 4th generation of my advanced geometry suspension systems. That's a big word. The reason it's advanced geometry suspension system is because all my career, I really, really focus on suspension geometry because it's all about grip. You want as much of the tire on the ground at all times to maximize your grip. And that is done with geometry. Now, factory cars are not focused on performance geometry. They're focused on ride quality and fuel economy and tire wear. But what we're looking for is, how much grip can you get? Because the more grip you get, the more fun the car is to drive on the street, and the quicker it's going to be on track. So I'm always looking, how do we maximize grip through geometry? And I've got a suspension geometry program I've had for a very long time. I love it. I wouldn't use anything else. To give you an idea, it's so old, it's written in DOS. And the problem is that it was being updated to Windows a number of years back, but the guy that created and wrote it passed away. and his family just dropped the whole thing, so that you can't get him anymore. So I just hold on to it like with my life, because it's a great program, and it's really served me well. Anyway, geometry. Getting back to geometry. So really focus on geometry. The S197 Mustang. You look at any Mustang, and as far as performance on track, there's a couple of things that you need to think about. Number one, just the basic platform. Big engine in the front, no weight in the back with live axle. It's a pony car. I mean, that's the way they came out in the 60s, and it's still a pony car, which means its primary purpose, primary function, its best utilization is straight line and fast. I mean, they're drag race cars. Get big engines, it's big acceleration, so the strength is going in a straight line fast. The weaknesses come when you have to stop and turn. So when I looked at the S197 suspensions, okay, let's take a really hard look at this. So straightaways are the strength, braking and cornering are the weaknesses. So what I did is I came up with a geometry package that maximizes the strengths and mitigates the weaknesses. So what do I mean by that? Okay, the first thing is, in racing, your best opportunity, and you've seen this on TV, the best opportunity to overtake somebody is braking. If you can brake later than somebody to a corner, you're going to get the corner, you're going to go away. So braking is really important. The Mustangs don't stop that well. You really get the brakes hard, and the whole back of the car wants to come up in the air. So what I've done is in the back of the car, I put quite a bit of anti-squat, which anti-squat is what gets the car traction going forward. But the other thing about anti-squat, it also converts into anti-lift. So it doesn't let the back of the car come up. And I put anti-dive in the front, so the car doesn't come down. And with the higher spring rates that we run, the whole concept is to be able to brake really, really late and really, really hard. If you're going down a straightaway, and if you're racing, and if you can brake 1, 2, 3 car lengths later than the guy next to you, game over. You've got the corner, you're gone. In track days, I actually use it as an intimidation factor. If there's somebody I want to get past, what I'll do is I'll kind of lay back, and there's like kind of a turn. Like a good example is turn 5 at Road America, and I did this to Porsches. I did it to Ford GTs. It works every time. I'll lay back, and then I'll just wait, and just lay into the brakes. And I had one guy tell me, he said he couldn't believe it. He said he was coming up to the corner. He looked in his mirror. There was a red dot behind him. And before he even got to the apex, all 3 mirrors had red. What I do is I really come up on people and just, from way back and I'll brake them, which flusters a lot of people. They get intimidated and just, kind of wave you by. So late braking is not only good for racing, it's also an interesting intimidation tool, let's call it, for track days. So if you get the car to brake later, we just made the straightaway longer, strength longer, weakness braking, we improved that. Now the other weakness is turning, and what I've done with the front suspension. Now I'm not going to go into geometry. The guys in Speed Therapy Academy know all about the geometry. We spent I think a couple of days just going through suspension geometry and how I make it work. But what I do with the geometry is make the car turn. I mean, you turn the wheel and the car turns. So by making it turn like now and not having to wait, we get quicker rotation. So we're getting into the corner quicker. And then what I do with the roll centers, bring the front roll center up and the rear roll center down, by going through a corner. Now the roll center in the back is an important one because it's high in a Mustang. And everybody's driven a Mustang knows they go around the corner really fast. You can feel the inside wheel tire getting light because all the weight shifting to the outside tire. That's because the roll center is high in the axle. With the rear grip kit, we move that down to the bottom of the differential, which reduces the roll center, which means that in the front roll center, rear roll center down, it's kind of connecting the dots of the rear to front roll center instead of pointing down like a snowplow. Which is what happened. That's why Mustangs push so bad in the corner. It's all that weight. The roll is high, front roll center is low, rear roll center is high. It just really rolls out in that outside tire and overloads it. Anyway, bringing front roll center, rear roll center down. What happens is once we turn the steering wheel into a corner, don't have to wait as long for the axle to settle. Right? Because when you go into a corner, with a live axle car, you have to wait until the axle settles. If you don't and get back to the gas too soon, what happens? Whoop, car gets loose, oversteer. And as we've talked before, understeer is where the front of the car hits the wall first, oversteer is where the back of the car hits the wall first. So if you get the gas too soon, especially with high-powered cars and live axle, I mean, the cars get really loose and they get uncontrollable. So by bringing the roll center down, we don't have to wait as long for the axle to settle, which means you're back to the gas sooner. I'm typically 70-80% throttle by the time I hit the apex in most corners, which means that, you know, I've got really good mid-corner speed. Now, mid-corner speed equals good corner exit speed. And being quick is all about corner exit speed. Whoever gets off the corner the quickest with the most momentum is going to be the quickest at the end of the straightaway. And I proved that time and time again with Ruby, my 2012 GT4 RS track car. Because I'm really quick to the middle of the corner, a great launch off the corner. I mean, like cars like GT500s, even the big straightaways at Road America, you know, I'm past them because I had so much more momentum. They have to wait for their axle to settle and then kind of get back into it. So I'm already gone. We have a video somewhere where actually it's kind of cool at Road America. It starts at turn 14, and I was carrying enough speed through mid corner that, and there, I had to actually back out of it because there was a Viper in front of me. And as soon as we kind of got through the corner, he got off the side, I got back on the gas, and I had so much more momentum than he had. I got past him. This is a Viper and just a 12 Mustang with just cold air kit and exhaust. And I had enough momentum off the corner to stay in front of him all the way down the straightaway. So getting off the corner is important. The other thing about getting off the corner, if you're getting back to the gas sooner, you're getting more corner exit speed. And if you're getting to the gas sooner, then say you're getting to the gas before the apex and you're flat out on the pedal, you know, by the time you hit track out, where other people are just starting to feed in power. Well, what you've just done, you just made the next straightaway longer, you know, by 1 or 2 car lengths. And, you know, you start adding it up, you know, save 2 or 3 car lengths here, save a couple car lengths here every corner. And I mean, it adds up really, really quickly. So that's kind of like the whole philosophy, you know, behind my AGS 4.0. It's you know, the 4th generation of my advanced geometry systems, and I call it systems because it's like in the S197 we only have 3 components to our suspension: the rear grip kit, the front grip kit, springs and shocks. And the reason for that is every single component in like the rear grip kit, the front grip kit are specifically engineered to every piece is engineered to have an improvement on geometry. And every piece is engineered to work with the next piece as a system. That's why my cars handle so darn well. And anybody you see, anybody that's put the suspension on their car, you can rave about it. And you know, I mean, it took years and years of development to get there. Just to give you an idea, how many years of development? AGS 1.0, you know, the genesis of the advanced geometry suspension systems was the 1987 Celine R race cars that I engineered, built, and managed to 4 national championships in SCCA Pro Endurance Racing. And that's where I started. I actually started at the end of the 86 season. I connected with an engineer at Ford, Mike Jones, who's really smart, and he's a car guy. And he was in suspensions, and he would stay late, and we'd talk back and forth, and he'd work on you know, pickup points and geometry. So by the time we got to 87, we had a really good idea what we wanted to do as far as geometry to really make the cars work. Now let me predicate that. This was showroom stock endurance racing. I mean, I think the shortest race was 6 hours, most were 12 or 24. It's showroom stock. You can't change. Theoretically, it's a stock-based class. And Steve was crafty enough to get me 3 Virgin K members for the front, and over the course of an entire night, by the dawn, there were 3 K members sitting there that now had all new holes in them and were painted black, and you couldn't tell without measuring. You couldn't tell them the difference from a stock one. So that was one of the tricks, secrets, the 87 Celine cars. Why they had such good handling, is geometry. It's all about geometry, getting that tire down. And also, it's tire down, braking down, traction, grip. That's all about that. So that's kind of like the whole philosophy in my S197 suspension, and it works really, really well. And that's kind of a carryover from the AGS 3.0, which was the SN95 live axles from 94 up through 2004. But also some of that geometry also carried into the IRS Cobras, which we're still supporting. We're still supporting the IRS cars with parts and technical support, and we're planning on doing that for a long time, because I think we when it comes to Mustang IRS suspensions, we are the guys. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody out there that knows more about them, knows more about how to make them work, or have parts that come anywhere close to what we have. Like I say, we're going to continue to support the IRS cars for years to come. And we're starting to see the cool thing. We're actually have customers that have had like I say a 96 GT, and they found an IRS, they're putting the IRS on it. And we've got a number of people that have Fox cars that it's really cool. They're putting an IRS into a Fox, which aside from getting great handling, it adds a little weight to the back, which helps balance the car. And I say a little weight because everybody thinks it's like a whole lot of weight. From what I've seen, we haven't really had a chance to do a full weight measurement. But from what I've seen, the IRS is about 80 pounds heavier than the live axle. So if you put an IRS on the back of your Fox or SN95, you're not going to add, with our stuff, you're not going to add 80 pounds, because between our tubular control arms, the geometry fix, and coilover shocks, we take out 40 pounds. So in reality, you're only adding about 40 pounds to the back, which is perfect because the back of the cars are too light anyway. So it really helps balance the car, plus great handling. That goes along with our front grip kit, which is the K-member. Both of the IRS package, with the IRS, it's AGS 3.5, the SN95s. And we introduced that at the 2000 SEMA show. And it's been a great suspension package ever since. And we also, for the SN95s, have our own coilovers we have custom built for us for front and rear, because everything I do is coilovers. Yeah, for two reasons. Number one, you can adjust ride height, which is important. And secondly, you can change spring rates. If say we set a car up for somebody with like 600-pound springs, they do a lot of track days, but then they decide, well, I'm going to kind of not do as many track days and do more touring. Pop out the 600-pound springs and put in some 400, 450s. It's that easy. So, coilovers just make life so much easier when it comes to spring rates, and I'm a nut about spring rates. If anybody's ever been, all the people who've been with me for a while know that I'm, again, one of the only guys that really, really focus on spring rates. A real quick scenario on my spring rate philosophy. Stock, and use S197s because that's the easiest to talk about because it's spring on strut. S197s come out with about 134 to 150 pound front springs. The best, most lowering springs that you'll get in the aftermarket, about 190 pounds. Sport springs get up into like the 220 range. And I've seen somebody called competition springs that are like 250. Our touring package starts at 350. And our street performance is 400. Our intermediate track on street tire, like high performance street tires, not track tires, would be, depending on the driver and the car, I'll prescribe either 500s or 550s. For our fast guys in like advanced group on sticky tires, we're running 650 front springs. And if you think that sounds like a lot, on my late son Paul's World Challenge Boss 302S on Pirelli slicks with motorsport shocks, and when you start getting up in big spring rates, you have to have motorsport shocks designed to carry that. It was like 850, 950. I think one time we used 1,000-pound springs. So you can see is the more spring you put in the Mustang, the faster it becomes. But you can't put too much spring in on street tires, otherwise you kind of defeat the purpose. That's another subject we'll talk to another day. So anyway, that's kind of like the whole philosophy behind my springs. And maybe 6 months or a year ago, somebody sent me a clip of another company talking about their latest race car and how they had this is like a full-on race car. I'm guessing NASA, American Iron, or something like that. And they were touting that they had recently gone to coilovers. I've been in coilovers once, a long time. They recently went to coilovers, and they are all the way up to 400-pound springs. I thought, okay. I tell you what, a 400-pound spring on like an American Iron car, drive like a dream. Be really, really easy to drive. Won't be super fast, but it'll be easy to drive. A spring rate in that range, 400, 450 on a track car or race car, super easy to drive. That's just because when the more spring you had, the quicker it comes. But also we're talking about that your envelope of air. It's just more spring starts shrinking. That's why it's just a normal intermediate track day guy would jump into a car like Paul's World Challenge car with 800, 900 pound springs on slicks. The chances of them not making a full lap are better than 70%, because everything happens fast. I mean, really, really fast. Your margin of error ends up about this big, and that's like for Paul, it was not a problem for him because he was so good. I mean, and he'd been driving for years. He was really good. He's got instant muscle memory. I mean, he doesn't have to think. When he feels something in the car, he just reacts. He doesn't even have to think about it. Somebody that doesn't have that level of experience, something happens, starts happening in the car, it takes them a little bit of time to process, and they're not going to have the reaction time to save it. So, I mean, springs are really important. But nice, easy track car to drive, 400, 500-pound springs. If you got sticky tires on Ruby, my car, with the Pirelli P0 Corsas, which are a track street tire, I was at 650, and most of our advanced track people we have at 650. So, and springs are really important in making cars handle. But you have to understand how they work, number one. Secondly, you have to have shock valving that supports the spring rates that you're running. Because you put a real big spring rate in like a stock shock, and they're not going to last. Let's just say somebody puts in even like aftermarket 197, put an aftermarket sports or quote competition springs at 225. Shocks are engineered around 150 spring rate, and you add that much more, and it's going to overwhelm, specifically the rebound. And back when we were doing Fox cars a long time ago, we had a lot of people say that they put like the motorsport springs on their cars and just killed the ride quality. The fact is, ride quality is controlled by the shocks. The springs, all the springs do, they hold the car up. Ride quality comes from the shocks. What they were doing, they're putting higher rate springs on stock shocks, most of which are worn out, and the shocks couldn't handle it. Anytime somebody put the sport springs on with this, even like a Coney Red, ride quality was dramatically improved. So I kind of got off on a big tangent there, talking about springs and shocks. Those are the kind of things that people learn in the academy. I mean, I go into really big detail on geometry, shocks, springs, and all that. In fact, last week, what did we do in the society last week? So many things going on. I don't care. I wrote it down. Oh, last week in the academy, I mean, we covered car prep, track setup, alignments, and dialing in. And what's coming up this week is like the big one. We've spent, I think, 10 weeks talking about all the things in the car, understanding how everything works together. But we're coming in the last 2 weeks where we're going to be really getting into dialing in the car for maximum performance, maximum handling. Now that's going to be, it's kind of like I've been building up to in the academy just for this, and everybody's pretty excited about that. And actually, the last master class we're going to have for the academy is a good friend of mine, a race engineer of many, many years, won Trans Am championships. He's engineered just every kind of race. Anyway, everybody wanted to know a little bit more about data acquisition. Now, I know enough data acquisition. What I pull out of data acquisition is only what I want to know to help make car go quicker. because you can really get in the weeds on data acquisition, looking at too many things. So I'm not a super data guy. I'm competent in data acquisition, the way I look at things, but I'm not like a full data on engineer. Anyway, Buddy Fay is an engineer, and when it comes to data acquisition, he actually wrote the book on it. Back in the 80s, he wrote a book on, I think it's called Data Power. So he's actually going to be our last masterclass speaker for the Speed Therapy Academy. And everybody's really looking forward to that because he's really, really smart guy and super accomplished race engineer. Let's see, what have I been through? My gosh, I've been through almost everything. Do you have any questions coming in? Why don't you?
We have one Christopher from our Speed Therapy Academy. Right up there.
Get Bridget a little bit closer so I can hear her and you can hear.
So
we have the lovely Bridget filling in for Carrie, who is under the weather.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. All right, so we have a question from Christopher from our Speed Therapy Academy. He's one of our members. And he had a question. He says, can Kenny comment on inverted versus regular front coilover struts? Which is better and why?
Oh, that's a great question. Christopher is one of our Speed Therapy Academy people and a regular on Cars and Coffee. And by the way, he's in Bulgaria. So he has to get up pretty early in the morning or stay up late at night, whichever the case may be, for this. And he's a super dedicated fan, I guess you'd say, or anyway, he's trying to learn a lot, and I hope we're teaching him a lot. The question is inverted shocks, struts versus standard struts. Okay, what's the difference? Okay, a normal strut, the whole package of the mechanisms on the bottom, you have a shaft that runs up to the top, and that's the way 90% of the shocks are. Inverted strut, it kind of flips it around. The mass, all the mechanisms at the top, and the shaft runs to the bottom. Typically, that is on race shocks. And the benefit to an inverted shock is the fact unsprung weight. I mean, you're taking weight off the control arm and mounting it to the chassis. So all you have running the control arm is just the shaft. Otherwise, I mean, the mass of the shock is mounted to the control arm, which as unsprung weight, you put it on the top and it's unsprung weight. I mean, it's a really great concept, but typically any of the inverted shocks are normally expensive. And that's what we use. If we're building a full-on race car, I would use inverted struts on the front, if they're available from the manufacturer that we're working with. So there's that. Inverted is cool. It just takes unsprung mass off the control arm and turns into sprung mass on the chassis. Any chance to pressure myself? Yes, she said, I should mention the consults again. Yeah, call in. I mean, I'll share with you what I know, and if I don't know something, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm an engineer. My mind is an engineer, so I'm not really good at BS. I'm not like a sales guy type guy. So the BS just doesn't work in this brain.
We do have a question from a BC Carrasco. It says, do you still make products for the Panther platform?
Oh boy, that's getting to my heart, man. The Panther platform, we did a lot way back when. The Panther platform, that those that don't know, are the Crown Vics. And we did, I guess it was around 98 maybe, we started doing Crown Vics. And the whole Crown Vic thing came about when Car and Driver came to me, and they wanted to do kind of a project car. They wanted to build like a quote, police-looking Crown Vic that had a ton of performance. So we spent a bunch of months and worked closely with Ford on the engine. But we put together a supercharged Crown Vic with better suspension, and we actually made our own brackets to put the Brembo 4-piston. Actually, back then it was like the F40 brake package on there, bigger wheels and tires, and it was an awesome car. It was supposed to be a 2-page article in Car and Driver, and turned into a 6-page article called the Lounge Lizard. If you Google Lounge Lizard car and driver, you still might be able to find the article. But that kind of started the whole thing with Panthers for us. And we didn't call them Crown Vics because Crown Victoria didn't quite have the same appeal as Panther. So we referred to them as Panthers because that's the platform. It was the Panther platform. And we built a lot of supercharged Crown Vics up through 2002. What happened in 2003? Marauders. Marauders came out still the Panther platform, but was significantly updated, especially with new aluminum front suspension. And of course, the Marauders had the 4-valve motors. And we built a ton of supercharged Marauders. And we had, I think, Car and Driver, I think. No, it was Auto Week. One of the editors at Auto Week had it, and he was driving around for the weekend, and one of his sons referred to it as a berserker. I mean, the cars were just really, really fast. We have one guy with one that says, what really makes his day is just completely annihilating Corvettes while having 2 baby seats in the back. He thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So getting back, and that's a long story, getting back to the Panther platform. As of right now, we do not have specific parts in the system for Panther. We can, if you want to do a few things, we can kind of help you, give you some suggestions. It's something that we've talked about bringing back in the future. We don't have quite the space right now to add another line of cars. But at some point, we've actually had conversations and meetings on that of getting some of the getting Panthers in good shape and turn them into really cool super high performance sedans. And I mean, I drove Panthers for a long time, all the way up until they became not quite as practical because we were moving a lot of stuff around. And that's when I had my Panther, and Carrie had the Edge, and I just love the Edge. So anyway, if you're looking for things, you call set up a 15-minute consult, and I'll try to guide you as best I can, because I think some of the parts that we used are still available, and I can kind of help you if I can. But yeah, I really love to bring the Panther platform back, because that was a cool car. I love those cars.
Okay. There's been some conversation. Wendy's talking about her track weekend last week, and you might want to comment on this. It says, I've had issue recently in a few turns with push end of last weekend. I softened my sway bar, only did 1 session on it, and it was a lot of change times were good, but I hadn't really adjusted to it. Okay.
It's, does she say if it's pushing into the corner or off the corner?
She says, a few turns with push end, yeah.
Okay. The kind of in the simplest terms of shocks, I use bump in the front from the apex, from the turn into the apex, and rebound from the apex off. Now, why do I say rebound from the apex off? Okay, we're talking about the makeup of a shock absorber. A spring compresses, and as a spring compresses, once it's at its full compression and decompresses, get boing, and they'll keep bouncing. The whole purpose of a shock is to control how fast or how slow that spring unwinds itself, and that's with single adjustable shocks. That's what rebound does. It adjusts how slowly it allows the spring to come off. I mean, the only thing to do is there's not enough real information for me there, but make sure your tire pressures are right and camber is right and toe is right. But then also try, tuning is every car, every day, every driver, every track is different. And tuning kind of gets to be a personal thing. And when you get in a situation like that, the best thing to do is, add a couple clicks of rebound for 1 session. Did it get better? Did it get worse? If it get worse, then go back and take a couple of clicks off. In fact, you can, with the shocks that adjust on the top, you can even go do a couple laps and pull in and have somebody adjust the shocks for you. But you just have to work back and forth. If you had double adjustable shocks, that's where you might put just a click of bump into the back to help the car turn, kind of rotate more. But pushing, if it's off the corner, Yeah, I mean, you just have to go back through and check everything. Alignment, the camber on the tire temperatures on camber. But as far as adjusting, yeah, you can just it's adjust the sway bar all the way out soft, adjust it all the way to firm, and you have your notebook, make your notebook and write down the results. I did this. I just notebooks. Everybody should have a notebook for their car, and every track that you go to should have a separate section. And if you make an adjustment, write it down, because if you think you're going to remember it, you won't. But yeah, it's just a matter of writing down. I made this adjustment, and this is what happened. But it's kind of trial and error. It's probably something to do. And the roll stiffness typically helps turn into center of the corner. That's the sway bar. It's the rebound on the shock is what controls the spring decompressing. So I would just try it both ways and see what happens. The other thing is that if you've got one corner that it pushes on and it's not the most important corner on the track, you might spend a lot of time getting it to go around that corner, but you might not work on a different corner. And I just said the most important corner on the track. The most important corner on the track. And when I go to a new track, what we tune the car to right out of the bat is the last corner before the longest straightaway. That's the most important corner, because it's about, remember, talked about corner exit, getting the car off that corner. The next most important corner we'll look at is the corner before the next longest straightaway or shortest straightaway. And working around those, then it will balance everything else throughout the track. Sometimes you give up some stuff. Like some tracks will have a section that's kind of like really twisty where nobody passes anybody. So making it work super good there isn't as important as getting it off the corner. So I think it's just a matter of give it a try either way.
Okay, she had a follow-up question. Says, what about supporting the P71 racing that is trying to get started? I've been looking at one to play with.
I'm not sure what that is. You're going to have to send me some more information. But P what?
P771.
P71 racing. I'm sorry, I don't know anything, but please send me some information so I can educate myself.
We had a comment from Joe Johnson earlier. He was speaking. He says, I seem to run through tires and new slicks are just too expensive. Any suggestions on the tires?
Okay, he's got a GT350. Suggestion on the tires. Well, first of all, is the pressure right? Is the pressure right? Is the alignment right? The other thing is you might think about a different shock package. I know that one of the reasons we use the JRZs, aside from that they're the shock that helped Paul win the championship, is the fact that they're really good on tire wear. They help tire wear. So it's like tires are consumable, and there's a lot of things can chew up tires. Shocks, better shocks can help extend tire life, but you always have to make sure you got your pressures right, and you've got your camber adjusted right for front and rear, and you've got all the caster in there. There's a tire temperature is super important. I wrote an article a number of years back that I recommend everybody read if they're doing track days. You can Google Kenny Brown tire temps, and it'll come up, and I'll tell you exactly why I do tire temperatures, and it's so important for a lot of our customers that are out in the field with my suspension. They call in and say that like if Wendy were to call in during the week and schedule a call with me, questions I'd ask. First question is what the tire temperatures. I need to know what the tire temperatures are, all four, because that'll give me a starting point for data. And then, like we talked about in Speed Therapy Academy this week, the first session in the morning, the first day, you just work on tire pressures, tire temperatures, tire pressures. Because if they take the time to do that, then the car's gonna be quick the rest of the weekend. Getting back to Joe, boy, it's slicks are too expensive. But the other thing about slicks, if you go to slicks, you have to significantly increase spring rate. We see a lot of people that'll put like they have like a Boss Mustang, and they'll go get some used slicks and put it on the car. And what happens is they chew up tires, and they don't end up being. I mean, they're quicker, but it's not really good balance. The reason for that is slip angle. When you go around a corner, a tire's got a certain amount of slip angle. I mean, that's 100% of the tire. You get that slip angle, and it's going to squeal or let go, but you've got a certain split angle. Well, slip angle. As the tire reaches that split angle, the car's in roll. And slip angle and roll, they kind of work together and go around the corner. Now you add a slick, which is super, super sticky. All of a sudden, you got no slip angle. You go around the corner, the tire stops, okay? Stops moving. But the chassis doesn't. The chassis will continue to roll a lot with the slicks. And what happens is Mustang has what's called a positive roll front suspension. The more the car rolls, the more the front suspension goes positive. So by not having enough spring to support it, you're going to roll over, you're going to chew up tires. Remember I said on the World Challenge car, on Paul's car with Pirelli slicks and Motorsport shocks, we're running 850-pound spring rate, 950-pound spring rate. So you go to the stickier the tire, the more spring you need in the car. It's just, kind of that's the way it is. It's all physics. So the slick, the tire stops, the car doesn't, it rolls, front suspension goes positive, and you start tearing up the tires. And we've had a lot of people. I heard of a number of people that put like slicks on stock suspensions actually gone off track. Some in a big way, some in a little way. But I absolutely do not recommend slicks on track day tires, or track day cars, unless you got the spring rate to support them.
Okay, Brian West had a question. He says, I recall that people said that the Delrin polymer pounded out and had to be replaced periodically. Is this true? Still the case, or is this a wise tale?
I'm going to say possibly. I'll say possibly because if you recall when I was talking about Delrin, when we put them on race cars, we custom fit every single bushing to its specific place on the car. So that, like I say, when I lift up the control arm, it'll just have a slow descent. Delrin is it's precise. And if you haven't taken the time to make sure that everything is exact, then what could happen is you might have a little bit of misalignment on those Delrins. And if that's the case, then there's a chance that you are going to beat the Delrin out a little bit. So I would say, yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, if you don't have complete geometry and continuity between the suspension points, it could very well pound out the Delrin. But like on our race cars, we a set of Delrin bushings will last the season. So I would say possibly.
And back to Wendy.
Brian West is another one of our Academy guys.
Earlier, back to Wendy.
And Joe.
She said the P71 is the police interceptor Crown Vic.
Police interceptor Crown Vics. What was the question about P71? Actually, the police interceptors, everybody thinks are really fast. They got the same engines as every other car. What makes them different, they've got a much better suspension. They've got like a bigger radiator for better cooling because, cop cars sometimes they sit in idle for a while. They've also typically have bigger alternators because they need to run all the electronic equipment, all the little radar guns to get you. But as far as the engines, they're the same, but it's a much better platform. And we actually use some of the pieces off of the police cars on the regular Panthers because nobody really makes parts for Panthers, aftermarket parts. So we would raid the Ford bin for police interceptor parts.
Okay, here's what about supporting the P71 racing that is trying to get started? I've been looking at 1-2 Pro.
I didn't know that. A P71 Racing Crown Vics. That'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, I need to look into that. Because like I say, we've got a lot of experience with Crown Vics, both the the earlier ones, and then the 0304s and newer with the updated suspension. So yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that P71 racing. I'll Google that after I'm done here and check into it. But thanks for telling me about that. I'll look. Do you have any more questions? I'm running out of coffee. That must mean the hour's up.
Kobe Ward just commented. He said, "My curiosity is piqued regarding the secret S197 rear suspension part you talked about last week."
For now, it's secret. We will be introducing it in a little bit. It's something I've been working on for a lot of years. We just filed the patent on it a couple of weeks ago, which means we can start talking about it. The Speed Therapy Academy people know about it, but they're sworn to secrecy. In fact, we're doing a sort of pre-production run of 10 units. And I think most of the Speed Therapy Academy guys have already put a deposit down on. But what we're going to do is, we want to get a little bit further along in the production process, because we did a lot of prototype testing, and we've made a number of adjustments on the prototypes that we're taking into production. And we're just, just now working on getting them in production. So that the next phase is in, and I don't know how many weeks, just have to stay tuned, but we will introduce it in a special, like a special workshop or event that you can find out through the Speed Therapy Society. Speed Therapy Society people are going to be the next people to find out about it. And then probably after the first of the year, we'll be introducing it to the general public. So being part of our family has great benefits. Like I say, Speed Therapy Academy guys know all about it. I blew them away, but they're like, can't talk about it. In fact, Cliff Scar here, he has a Ford Racing FR500S. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that is the race cars that Ford Racing built in 2008-9 for the Mustang Challenge Series. And we had been talking with Cliff about making this car better for a while, and all of a sudden I discovered it was the number 44 Speedworks car. It was one of the three FR500S race cars, Speedworks race cars that I engineered for the Mustang Challenge Series. So it's pretty cool to see it again. Anyway, he's getting complete suspension. He's getting Profar R brakes back. Those are his Profar R brakes that I just showed you, and the rear 14-inch rotors. He's getting the front grip kit, the big brakes, JRZ single adjustables, and rear grip kit 2 in the back. So we'll be talking about that in future weeks. I just want to be a little further along before we really start talking about it, because it's, for those who don't know, I am one of the most copied people in the aftermarket. I can go back for years and years and years, and the number of parts and components from Mustang that we introduced to the market have been so heavily copied everywhere. So the reason I put so much work into this new suspension that we went ahead and patented it, because I don't want somebody turning around and trying to do knockoffs. So we wanted to protect ourselves, because you'll find out when we do a little special thing in the Speed Therapy Society. You'll find out just how much work I put into this thing and how good it works. It's pretty amazing. So all I can say is just hang out. It's coming. Like I say, we want to be very measured in how we do this for a number of reasons. But I probably shouldn't have said anything. Well, I shouldn't have said anything now. Well, I did. So I'm going to get everybody all psyched up. So it'll be a few weeks out. We want to get into the first production run and get some test fitting done, because, like I say, we built 4 prototype units for development, and we tested the daylights out of them. I want to get into production before we introduce the next group, which is going to be Speed Therapy Society. And the general public aren't going to find out about this until probably sometime after the first of the year. Speaking after the first of the year, Terry says there's a number of people that would like me to do another Speed Therapy Academy. So the way things are looking We may be doing another Speed Therapy Academy right after the first of the year, starting in January. So keep that in mind. There'll be more information coming up. Any of the people, there's people right here today. They're in the academy. Joe's in there. Hirschberg's in there. Who else was in there? Brian. Robert Johns. So, yeah, I really try hard to share as much as I can out of my brain and teach them. So my whole idea of the academy, by the time we're done, they're going to be able to go out and they're going to know enough about all this that they can kind of work and tune on their car and really improve their overall driving experience because there's nothing better than a car that handles. I love driving. Going around the corner, feeling the car just kind of settle into the track and you feel all the G's in your butt. I just love that. That's why my cars handle so well, because I like driving them. Do you have anything else this week, or should we wrap it up?
There are no more questions.
No more questions. I'm out of coffee, and we're a little over on time. So please subscribe to our. I should have done this before. Carrie wasn't here to remind me. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we simulcast on Facebook Live and YouTube every Saturday morning. And then, of course, we've got on YouTube, we've got all the episodes. Because I think this week is episode 32. I wouldn't have believed this when we started, a number of months ago, just in front of a phone answering some questions. So anyway, that's sign up, hit the bell. Join us in Speed Therapy Society. It's pretty cool. And if we don't have any more questions, Kobe's asking what it's going to cost. You'll find out that later. And unfortunately, it's not inexpensive because it's pretty complex. But you'll find that out in the coming weeks.
We have one question that just came in from Annabeth. Pharaoh says, rear grip 2, what would it be? IRS kit, watts length would be major. I'm not sure he's asking.
Can't tell you. You're just going to have to wait. It's not an IRS, I'll tell you that. And it's pretty unique. I shouldn't even be talking about it, but I probably should build up a little excitement for when we actually introduce it to you guys. But like I say, the Academy guys know all about it, it's coming up. We're actually doing some adjustments on the package this week with manufacturing, because there's a lot of machine parts, and it's great. So I'm pretty excited about it, and the guys in the Academy can tell you, when I start talking about this thing, the suspension really wound up. So with that, if there's no more questions, we will see you next week. And remember to keep the shiny side up. And please send in your questions because, again, I talk about what you guys want to learn about. And I know a lot. 40 years in professional motorsports. Been there, done that more than once, which kind of makes me different than other people, because my old trusted toolbox, I made my living out of that toolbox for 20 some years. In fact, I still use it all the time. So, just that's why I know cars so well. I've been started as a floor sweeper and apprentice mechanic, master mechanic, crew chief, engineer. That's kind of like the progression I went through, all self-taught, because it's easy to me. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. Listen, we'll see everybody next Saturday, and be sure to share. If you're getting value out of this, and some friends that'll get value out of this, please share it with them or invite them to Speed Therapy Society, because the society people are going to be next people to learn about my new suspension. So until next week, enjoy the coming fall, which I'm sort of ready for, because it's going to kill all the pollen. I'm really not quite ready for it, because what comes after the pollen dies. So anyway, we'll see you next week.